Hi, today you're going to be learning how to write a persuasive essay. I apologize for not being here, so please be patient, take notes. I will be telling you what to write down, and then for your reference, this will also be posted on School Loop. So let's go. Okay, little animation problem there. Counterclaim. The 2 points I want you to copy down are that a persuasive essay has a counterclaim. I also want you to note that for our purposes, your counterclaim will be in both your introduction and your third body paragraph. So whoever is in my classroom, whether it's a substitute or if one of my TAs could help me out, please pause the recording right now so that students can please copy down the first and third bullet point. We're going to continue now. I'm going to move to the next slide. You should have had enough time to copy down the first and third bullet points. And we're going to write about how do I write a counterclaim, and I'm going to ask you to copy down some of the examples. Although one could argue that Five Guys Burgers is the best hamburger establishment because of the taste of the food, the counter is the best place based on its pricing, variety of menu items, and level of service. What I'd like for you to do right now is to copy down the entire sentence. Yes, I can hear you groaning in the background. You are going to be copying down 3 different examples into your notebook or on a piece of binder paper to use as a reference when you're writing your counterclaim. So again, please pause this, my TAs or the substitute. The next step is going to be to identify the different components of the counterclaim. In the previous example, I want you to underline the counterclaim. I want you to put a squiggly line underneath the thesis, and hopefully yours is better than the one that I created. And I want you to highlight the compass. So please look at your example and do the following steps. So now we're going to go back to the previous slide, and I want to highlight here for you what you should have identified as your counterclaim. The counterclaim is, although one could argue that Five Guys Burgers is the best hamburger establishment because of the taste of the food, from although to the comma is your counter argument. If you didn't get that, oops, if you didn't get that, then please change it now. The thesis is that the counter is the best place the best place. Not a very good thesis, it doesn't even tell me what kind of place, but the counter is the best place. Your compass is that its pricing and variety of menu items and level of service are what make it the best place. We're ready to move on to the next example, so I'm just going to scroll through really quickly. You're going to copy this down. While it is true that Michael Phelps is a champion swimmer and should be respected for his athletic accomplishments, he should not be held up as a role model because of questionable behavior, such as abusing recreational drugs. So this is the time for someone to pause this slide while you copy it down, and then you're going to go through the same steps as before. You will underline the counter-argument, put a squiggly line underneath the thesis, highlight the compass. As a reminder, these are the steps that you need to go through. You can almost stop your groaning now about how much you're having to write. This is the last example I'm going to ask you to copy down. Soccer is a great sport that is loved worldwide because it is fast-paced and requires a great deal of player skill. However, tennis is the best sport. It requires high physical intensity, is easy to compete independently, and requires little equipment. You're going to copy this down, and then after you've done so, please do the same steps you did previously, which are to underline the counter-argument, put a squiggly line underneath the thesis, and highlight the compass. So now, whoever is in control of the computer can please pause while students write this down. It should take no more than 3 minutes. By now you should be feeling fairly confident about identifying the counter-argument, the thesis, and the compass. What makes this example unique is that the counterclaim and the thesis are broken up into several sentences, and that's not a bad thing. It's just stylistically, it's a different choice. The counter-argument is that soccer is a great sport that is loved worldwide because it is fast-paced and requires a great deal of player skill. That's your counter-argument. The however also indicates a transition to the thesis. The thesis is that tennis is the best sport. The compass is that it requires physical intensity, is easy to compete independently, and requires little equipment. Now is the point where I want you to write your own thesis. Be sure to include a compass. If you find it helpful, you might want to underline the thesis and put a squiggly line under the compass, or use some sort of coding system to be sure that you've included it all. This should take you at least 3 to 4 minutes, and I would refer to the T-chart that you did on Tuesday in class. My fourth period, you will have a handout with the Odyssey essay instructions that you should have completed prior to this PowerPoint, and you'll refer to that T-chart in order to do this assignment. Now that you've written your thesis with your compass, you're ready to write your counterclaim. Consider modeling your counterclaim after one of the examples. You could start with although, or while some may say, or you could break up your counterclaim and thesis into several sentences. Just be careful that it's not choppy. After you've had time to do this, I will be ready to move on. The introduction. The introduction requires at least 3 to 4 sentences of background about the Odyssey that relates to your thesis. It's important to strategically consider which important information about the poem is the most important. What is the story about? Who helped Odysseus? What adventures did he go on? If you were writing about fate versus free will, which question do you think would be the most relevant to answer in the background? As your reader, I think the most important information would be to answer the question, who helped Odysseus? Because you may be making the case that he was helped by divine intervention, and therefore was guided by fate. However, if you were answering the hero or not a hero question, you might be answering, what adventures did he go on? Because you would be using that evidence as proof of his heroic behavior or lack of heroic behavior. You'll have to strategically think about what your thesis is prior to deciding what kind of background evidence you want to include. Now we're ready to move on. Your order of introduction. Your introduction should include 2 to 3 sentences of relevant background information. Your counterclaim, followed by your thesis. An introduction should be no less than 5 sentences. Please take about 7 to 10 minutes right now and work on your introduction. My expectation is that when I return to see you on Monday, you should have the introduction fully completed. The first body paragraph. Each body paragraph will need a topic sentence that introduces the first point of your compass. You will need 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph. At least one of the examples has to be a quotation from the text. So in other words, each piece of evidence, of the 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph, one will have to be a direct quotation. For each piece of evidence, you will need to do what we call embedding evidence. I want you to copy this down now. We call this CQC or CQA, which means context, quote, commentary, or context, quote, analysis. For each piece of evidence, even if it's not a quotation, you need to provide some context, which is brief background information about where the quote appeared and what was happening at the time. You will include the quotation or the piece of evidence and then analysis. On the next slide, I will address what constitutes analysis. So please take a minute, put this on pause, copy this down. Analysis is where you explain why your evidence supports or connects your thesis. Simply saying that it connects to your thesis is insufficient. The second body paragraph will follow the same format as the first body paragraph. You will have a topic sentence with an arguable point that is based on your compass. You need to have a minimum of 2 CQCs per body paragraph. In other words, 2 pieces of evidence, each with context and analysis. The key point with the topic sentence is that the point that you make not only connects to the compass, but that it's arguable and not a statement of fact. I apologize for having been out so much this week. I will be back almost all of next week. For 4th and 6th period, I intend to extend the deadline on this essay until after the week of Halloween, to enable you to get help outside of class and to maximize tutorial to get the support you need to be successful in this essay. That same deadline will not extend to my 3rd and 5th period because they received instruction from me on block. I'd like you to spend a few minutes working on your introduction, your thesis, and your compass before we move on to the next work that you'll do in the class today. Thank you.